pulsating, vibrating, reggae, reggae, reggae. Every sky rock, a steady mental, a quadrillion.
Morning, Mr. Debon Panton, about African spirituality.
All right, thank you very much, sir. It has been a while since we had our discussion, and I'm looking forward to going through this, although I will admit that I'd forgotten, and I've been up since I think 3 o'clock this morning getting this thing sorted out. But I love this, so it wasn't a problem. Anyway, I shared my screen. How do I do this now? Yes, I've shared my screen, and on the screen you will see the Zang Beto, Barotse, and Kompo. The important thing to understand, though, is that for your listeners, for both your listeners, is that when you speak of African spirituality, it is similar to talking about African religion. There is no single religion that is across all of Africa. There is no single language that is all across Africa. If someone were to say to you, say book in Spanish, libro or libro, I'm not even so sure, but if someone were to say to you, say book in African, you need to know which African language they want, So it's the same thing with the spirituality. A number of spirituality. On the screen, the Zangbeta, which is from Voodoo, African Voodoo, in Benin and Togo. Then there's the Barotse of the Lotse people from South Africa, Zambia, etc. And the Kompo, which is from Senegal. But I just put these still images here just to show a diversity. Doesn't mean that we're going to get in any great details about these. We're speaking African spirituality in a very general way. All right. Now, one of the things that we look at, that I want us to look at, is God, universe, spirit, and other spiritual beings. The thing is, we are in Jamaica, and the National Library advises that Jamaica is a Protestant Christian nation. Now, Protestant Christianity is part of the Abrahamic faith. One of the big three, and I'm going to go in a little more detail with that in a few minutes. And one of the things in Jamaica is that there's a lot of discomfort about talking about spirits. Some people think that it's the devil's playground, as I heard one person put it. There is this Manichean worldview where it's either absolute good or absolute evil, and of course, where the Abrahamic faith put themselves there in the absolute good. So traditions from Africa are seen as evil. We need to get that out of our heads, all right? African traditions are older than the Abrahamic faith. They were here before. And in fact, the Abrahamic faith adopted a lot of the tradition, a lot of what they do from Africa and modified it. Anyway, I'm not tearing at Abrahamic faith. I'm just saying that we need to be a little more tolerant, all right? One of the things I want us to look at is the whole business of the concept of God. In the Abrahamic faith, God is the supreme creator. It's a Germanic word. It's very cultural from the German word for good. Pronounced like gut, I think, that is where the word God comes from. The ultimate good, all right? This title or this name, this nomenclature is used across a number of traditions. For instance, you will find Arabs speaking about God, using the word God. But then in Arabic, the word for God is Allah. So Muslims will speak about Allah, but then there are Arabic Christians as well. And they too speak of Allah, although they're not Muslims. So it's a title, a name, and they all speak of God. All right? The concept of God is the same in African spiritual traditions. It is the supreme creator, and the nomenclature varies from tradition to tradition. In Yoruba, it is Olodumare. For the Ijaw, it is Tamono, and you have other names as well. The Congolese, you've got Nzambi, etc. All right? Is God male, female, both, or neither? I know the Abrahamic faith people will be tearing out their hairs. Maybe they never thought of it in this way before, and that's fine. In the Abrahamic faith, God is assigned the he title. It could be a situation where it is not necessarily thought that God is masculine, but because of the male-female scenario, male is thought to be more appropriate. It's a stronger title. I am speculating, I don't know. But in African traditions, there are traditions that have God as male, female, both, and neither or neither. For instance, again, in the Yoruba tradition, Olodumare, no gender has been ascribed to Olodumare. Olodumare is beyond gender, the supreme creator. All right. You have other traditions that hold God as female, some as male and female. I'm going to get into a little bit more of that as we go along when we look at the structure of God in African spiritual traditions. Where is God located? By default, people from the Abrahamic faith will tell you that God is in heaven. And personally, I don't have a problem with that. But we want to get a little more information on it than that. And we're coming back to that too. What is a spirit? Again, in Jamaica, as in all Christian nations, the concept of spirit tend to come with some amount of trepidation. For a definition, a spirit is a non-corporeal entity, a life force that does not have a physical body. All right, it exists, can be communicated with, it can communicate with you. It does not have a physical body. All right. Where is the spiritual relative to the physical world? I remember, or vice versa. I remember doing a presentation some months ago when I asked these questions, and persons were, their minds were being stretched because they never thought of it like this. We speak of the physical world and as well as the spiritual world, but in terms of where one is relative to the other, no one at the time had thought of it in this way. Is the physical world a small subset of the spirit world, or is the spirit world a small subset of the physical world? My own personal position is, and I'm not saying that this is absolute. I learned a long time ago not to be too strident, but my personal position is the physical world is a small subset of the spirit world. Bearing in mind that the creator was here before there was anything else. And depending on which traditions you follow, we're told that the earth was created. So it had to be created somewhere. Now, wherever that person is in which the earth was created, I consider that to be the spirit world. So for me, the physical world is a subset of the spirit world. Another question, is your spirit located within your body, or is your body located within your spirit? I know that I know I may be stretching people's mind by asking these kind of questions. I was watching a video the other day, a couple of weeks ago, maybe about a month ago. It was one of those universal churches, and the presenter holds it that the physical body exists within the spiritual, within this, the spirit. A person's spirit is the outer, and the physical body fits within it. And he made the suggestion that there are persons with a glow around them. And he sort of connected it to Christianity with the halo over Christ's head and all of that. And he holds that the physical world is within the physical body. One's physical body exists within one's spirit. Now, as to my own position, honestly, I really don't know what to say on this one. I'm going to leave this one alone. All right. Is your spirit alive? Based on the literal interpretation of the word alive, something that is alive can die. Now, the question is, can the spirit die? My own position on this is the spirit exists. It is beyond life or death. The physical body is alive, yes, and can die, and in fact does die, but the spirit exists beyond all of that. I think I had this one before. Yeah, whereas the spiritual world is, okay, let me ignore that. Hey, sorry about that. The concept of mythos and praxis. Um, Mythos looks at the theology, at the way things are done, the stories and legends of a particular tradition. You know, the praxis is the actual act of performing the rituals that are connected. How the rituals are done, the steps, and you know, the liturgy and all of that, how the thing is done. For instance, a baptismal ritual, it is done in a particular way. The wedding ritual is done in a particular way, and these are rituals within Christianity. They may not be thought of as rituals as such by a number of people, but they are rituals. Okay. Earth-based spirits, again, in Christianity, and you know, let me hasten to add again that I am not knocking Christianity. I'm just giving some differences between Christianity and the African, spiritual traditions. Earth-based spirits are not accepted within Christianity. They are thought of as being evil. They talk about no lesser gods and all of that, and you know. However, in African spiritual traditions, earth-based spirits are integral to the whole concept of, spirit and life. Okay. We're going to take a look at the organization of the Abrahamic faiths. All right, we're going to take a look at that now. And what you find is that Islam, Judaism, and Christianity, of which Judaism is the eldest, then Christianity, and the most recent one is Islam, which I think started, I think it's 600 years after Christianity. Some 600 after that. Judaism is the eldest, and Christianity adopted from Judaism, all right, when it was being formed. And Islam also adopted from both of them. It is what it is, all right? We're not saying that any of this is unreal or that it is fake. No, that's not where we're going. We're saying that they adopted, the later ones adopted from the earlier, and absolutely nothing is wrong with that. Next, we're looking at Christianity. When we speak of Christianity, it's not the same for everybody. For instance, the Orthodoxy, Ethiopian Orthodox, Albanian Orthodox, Russian Orthodox, Greek Orthodox, is a strand of Christianity, which is older than Protestantism. All right. The difficulty I'm having is that the research literature tells me that the Orthodoxy separated from Roman Catholicism, which is was the first form of Christianity. The Orthodoxy separated. However, the Orthodox exponents tells me that that is nonsense, that they were never part of Roman Catholicism. I said to them, well, I need to see that somewhere written in a book that I can quote and that we can discuss. And so far, I've not been able to get that. So I have it here, but I'm not necessarily saying it was not part of Roman Catholicism. Just that is one of the three strands of Christianity of which I'm aware. And although you have Orthodoxy here, Roman Catholicism, and Protestantism, there are some traditions that may include elements of one or all of them. It just is the way. It's human minds we're talking about and human behavior. All right. Protestantism, there's an event, I think it was called the Great Schism, where Anglicanism separated from Protestantism. Anglicanism separated, Pentecostalism, and then you have others. Others are, in the Jamaican experience, will be something like revivalism, which really is a mixture of, Pentecostalism and Roman Catholicism, etc. All right, these are just some of the alignments, and it may vary, depending on where the research information comes from. The structure of God. We're looking at Christianity, African Voodoo, and Bukongo. I know I spent so far the first 7 or so slides talking about Christianity, but we're getting to African spirituality, which really is the focus of this presentation. Christianity. For Christianity, God, they speak of the Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. This is not a critique. I'm just saying that this is how it is defined. However, what you find is that for African spiritual traditions, there are some differences. All right. For instance, African voodoo, and this is not Haitian voodoo, no. African voodoo, which is from Benin and Togo. And this came from a healer that I spoke to who lives in Cotonou, Benin. He advises that the Supreme Creator is broken out into two. Lisa, which is thought to be male and is connected to the sun. Mao, which is thought to be female and connected to the moon. But together they are seen as one, Lisa Mao. Okay, so within Benin voodoo, Lisa Mao is the Supreme Creator. And there may be other names as well. I mean, one of the things I learned is that for African spiritual traditions in particular, you have differences from place to place. It is what it is. All right? And you will already see that the names are different. And that's another thing with African spiritual traditions. None of the biblical names, the Jesuses and the Marys and the Joseph and the Elijah, Elisha, none of those exist in the original traditional African spiritual practices. They're a totally different set of participants. All right? For the Bukongo tradition, the Supreme Creator is Nzambi, N-Z-A-M-B-I, or N-Z-A-N-B-E. I've seen it spelled both ways. And there are three manifestations of God. You have Nkongo Kalunga, which is thought to be the God of infinite love, represented by the color red. And that's another thing. In African spiritual traditions, color play a significant role, and numbers too. I'm not going to get much into numbers and colors today, but I'm just telling you that Nkongo Kalunga is represented by the color red. Nkongo Kalunga, infinite, God of infinite love. Nkongo Mohangi, which is this one here. Nkongo Mohangi is the God of infinite intelligence and is represented by the color yellow. All right. Nkongo Lesa, also referred to as Nempongo, is the God of infinite power, represented by the color blue. This is from the Bukongo tradition, which is the tradition within the Congo region. And the important thing about Bukongo as well is that it is not a unified, homogeneous tradition like Christianity. You have variations within the Congo. And that's a whole different lecture. So we're not going to go too deeply into that. All right. Across Africa, while the traditions are different, there are some commonalities. All right. And this was the best way I found to represent it. You have the creator being. Within Yoruba, it's Olodumare. Onyame, that's one name for the Supreme Creator within the Fantiacom. Tamono is from the Ijaw tradition. Nzambi is from the Congo. That encompasses everything. All right. Now, the next level, we're talking about spiritual hierarchy. The next level, you have earth-based deities or divinities. Within the Yoruba tradition, Obatala is one of them. Asase, I think, may not be correct, but anyway, it is here. And Mami Water is a name that is connected to a number of traditions across Africa too, also a second level spirits. And then you have the ancestral spirits. These are regular human beings like you and I who have passed. Their spirit is at the lowest level. All right. Categories of spirit in African spiritual traditions. Now, again, we're going to be talking a lot about spirits. And, you know, if you're interested in learning about African spirituality, or you're interested in adopting, you need to get comfortable talking about spirits. Now, this came from a Kenyan, rest in peace, he's John Umbiti. He's a Kenyan, but the funny thing is, I think he was a Presbyterian. You know, no, it wasn't Presbyterian, it was Anglican, I think. And he spoke of spirits in two very broad categories, nature spirits and human spirits, which themselves can be further broken down into two each. Nature spirits are spirits that manifest themselves from within nature, from the sky. You have sky spirits like Shango within the European tradition. Sky spirits manifest themselves from the sky, you know, wind, rain, lightning, thunder, that kind of stuff. All right. Earth spirits are spirits that manifest themselves from the earth, river, lake, water, you know, sea, caves, and mount sacred trees, sacred mountains, etc. Human spirits, the long dead, are persons who have died so far back in the past that nobody currently alive now remembers them in their when they were on this earth. For instance, my great grandfather, you know, James Linton Reed, born enslaved in 1803, he died at 97 in 19 no, he was born in he died in early 1900s. Nobody alive knows. I can guarantee that. Nobody alive now remembers him, remembers James Linton Reed in his human form. All right. Everybody who knew him has since passed. Recently dead, my mother, rest in peace, Ivy Linton. She passed in 2013, but there are a lot of people who still remember her in her physical form. So she is considered, based on this diagram, to be a recently dead or a living dead. All right. Now, part of the problems that I personally had with I don't want to say the Abrahamic faith because I'm more familiar with Christianity, although at one time I had explored Islam. Part of the problem I had with it is that the participants who are shown tend to be Caucasian, tend to be very pale, you know. And whenever you do see a dark-skinned individual, is normally in a situation like this. You know, this is supposed to be, I think, Saint Michael slaying the devil. Look at the complexion of the devil. I have a problem with that. So what I did, you know, in my own humble way, pay respects to the divinities from Africa, and as a black man myself, I did some AI representation. And this is my respectful tribute to one of the divinities from the Yoruba pantheon known as Orisha Obatala. All right. This one is another divinity, Orisha Oshun, which, you know, the beautiful black woman, her color is yellow. I did speak to yellow, to colors within African tradition. White is more, white and silver, light blue is Obatala. So I use those colors here. Orisha Oshun is orange and yellow and that kind of stuff. Then the next one is, I wanted to do something for a tradition that is not spoken about very often, particularly in Jamaica. You may have seen images of the San people or the Khoisan people, the Bushmen in like Angola, Namibia, Southern Africa, somewhere there, Zimbabwe, etc. This divinity is my representation, my humble representation of the Khoisan creator God. Within the Khoisan people, they have their own religion, obviously. And this is the divinity known as Sui Gaub, the supreme creator for the Khoisan people. I did speak about different names, the nomenclature, and different beliefs across Africa. The supreme creator, my respectful representation of Sui Gaub, Tsuigoab, yeah, Sui Goab, not Gaub, Sui Goab of the San people. All right. Now this I can't remember if I did Sacred Doors with you guys. But this is another type of divinity. And the funny thing, this divinity alone, I did a presentation that lasted for about 40 minutes with about 10-15 minutes questions after. So this in and of itself is a whole presentation, which I'm not going to get into. Suffice to say that these entities, they range in height from about I think I've seen in the literature range in height, total height of about 11 inches up to about 35-36 inches. They are very small, pygmoid, but they are shorter than the pygmies in the Congo. And they're neither good nor bad. It depends on how you use them. All right. They're all across Africa. I know that they'll come for Fofia. She would know about them too. In the Fantiacom tradition, they're known as Motias. And the names vary. I think I made mention in the very first one that I did that I did with you guys some years ago. Kumbo ala Amapi. This is the sacred doors for the Ijaw people. All right. Now we're gonna take a shift. We looked at some of the basic building blocks, the divinities, some of the other things as well. Now what we're saying is we're getting into energy and balance. We're moving towards healing and rituals, all right, which are very important within the African spiritual tradition. Now for starters, all matter, animate and inanimate objects emit energy. And there are a number of types of energies. Chemicals stored in atoms and, pardon the misspelling there, stored in atoms and molecules. I did all of this morning at 3 o'clock coming down, so I was still half asleep. Nuclear, stored in atoms, nucleus. Mechanical, object by tension, rubber band, spring, etc. Gravitational, determined by object's height, motion, kinetic, moving objects. Electrical energy, movement of charged particles. Thermal, movement of atoms and molecules, essentially speaking to heat. Sound, yeah, all right. These are the kinds of energies that are, and radiant, electromagnetic, I was wondering about that one. These are the kind of energies, and I'm sure if you look, if you do some research in this area, you will find significantly more. For instance, I remember seeing one called potential energy, and all of that kinetic energy, which is really this one, the moving energy. Sorry. Kinetic energy, which is this one. All right. I am not putting this here to say that this is a sum total of all the types of energies. These are the ones that I saw this morning when I was putting the presentation together, and I just decided to show them. All right. And we'll get this I present this here because it leads to something. All right. Now, human beings and animals emit energy too. All right. Chemical energy, motion, electrical, thermal, sound. All right. Radiant, which is electromagnetic. All right. Plants emit also energy too. Chemical, electrical, thermal. Yes, plants do in fact emit sound. I was surprised to find it too, but that was a long time ago. But this morning I remembered it when I was putting this together. Where this is going, all objects emit energy. In terms of wellness and the need for healing. When energy gets out of balance, there's supposed to be a certain kind of level between all of them, a certain level, the ideal level where everything is in balance and you have no problem, fine. However, when the energy gets out of balance, you have one more than the other, then you need healing to fix that. All right. Radiant energy. We're talking about body, mind, soul, balance. When all the energies are in sync, are in equilibrium, then everything is fine. When you get sick, energy is out of key, regardless of what the ailment is. For instance, I have a pinched nerve in my left hip now, so walking is kind of painful. Yes, there's a physical cause, but within the scope of balance of energy, it is I don't know which one is out of balance, but something is out of balance there. It needs to be healed. All right. And healing doesn't necessarily mean spirits. Healing can be biological too. Just making that clear. Okay. When everything is balanced, there's social wellness, emotional wellness, intellectual wellness, environmental wellness, financial wellness. And there are others too, but these are the ones that I put together this morning. All right. Again, I'm not saying that these are the only ones. These are the ones that I put together for this presentation. physical wellness, vocational wellness, all of these come together to make one, to form balance in one's life, you know. If energy gets off keel, then it requires action geared at regaining, retaining, sustaining, and maintaining equilibrium. Talking about healing, all right? Now for healing, we're speaking specifically about African spiritual healing now. This is where we're making a distinction, all right? There are different types of healing depending on whether the ailment manifests itself in the mind, body, or soul. This requires a performance of some kinds of rituals. All right. Now the rituals vary, as that point is saying. There are a multitude of rituals in existence, and there are numerous variations which not only depend on the spiritual tradition but also on the geographic location. What I have found is that even within the tradition called Ifa, persons from different locations within Nigeria, although they may all practice Ifa, there are variations on how some of the rituals are done. That is what this is saying. It doesn't mean that everything is exactly the same with everybody. All right? Talking about rituals. What is a ritual? Very simply, a ritual is a ceremony consisting of a series of actions performed according to the prescribed order as dictated by the mythos and praxis of the tradition. The mythos and praxis, as I said earlier, mythos is the theology, the stories and legends and all of that. Praxis is the actual operational aspect, how the thing is done, the order and why, etc. What does each step mean, that kind of stuff, right? Now, the processual flow of a ritual, you have the pre-ritual preparations, which may include smudging, sage, frankincense, and myrrh, etc. Invocation, this is when the ritual starts, drumming and chanting, praise songs, oriki, as they are called in the Yoruba tradition. Supplication, this is where the problems are stated and assistance sought from the particular divinity with whom the healer is communicating. Appeasement is made, whether alcohol or whatever the divinity requires. Sorry. Thanksgiving and disconnection. This is the end of the ritual. All right. Now, some rituals will require follow-up, if necessary. What I have found is that although there are differences in rituals, they tend to follow this very general step-by-step thing. Notice I'm not telling you how each step is done. I can't do that. But across Africa, let me not say across Africa, across the African spiritual traditions that I have looked at, that I have studied, this is the general order. And even in Jamaica as well. I'm sure you and the audience will know that in Jamaica there are religions. For instance, I spoke about revivalism, and there's another one, Kumina and the Maroons as well. They have African retention in their tradition, some of which were mixed with Roman Catholicism, Judaism, and Protestant Christianity. All right, but the general order in a ritual, just a step-by-step academic, from an academic perspective. Step 1, ritual preparation. Step 2, invocation. This is where you invite the divinities or the spirits to whom with whom you're communicating, whether it's the ancestral spirits or a spirit of healing, a warrior spirit, that kind of thing. Supplication is state what the problem is. Appeasement, you offer, whether it's Roman. Another thing that persons need to understand when you start talking about African spiritual traditions, you need to get comfortable with the idea of blood offerings. It is part of the tradition. All right, Christianity has adopted it and modified it, and they call it now what they call it, when they drink the wine and the bread thing. It came from blood offering. The wine is said to be the blood of Christ, and the bread is said to be the body of Christ. It's the same thing.
Communion.
Communion, yes, sorry. Yeah, it's the same thing, but this is where it came from. Okay? Appeasement is where the offering is made. Thanksgiving, you say thanks and whatever, you disconnect, and the follow-up comes afterwards. Now, in terms of offerings, I spoke about supplication, problems are stated, appeasement, offering. We're going to look at some of the items that are made as offerings, and this is primarily in Africa, but I've included some. I won't tell you which is which, but I've included some that are offered in Jamaica. For instance, libation, alcoholic drinks, rum, beer, gin, etc. White rum is very popular in Jamaica. In some traditions in Africa, gin is also very popular. Beer. Another thing that's popular in Jamaica are various wines. Ginger wine, wind Cornish wine. What's the next one name? Red label wine, etc. These are all offered as libation in Jamaica. Now, non-alcoholic drinks include like plain water. Some divinities do not accept alcohol. You know, I can't speak to that definitively without saying which it is. Some accept only fruit juice. Others accept aerated water. Yes, Pepsi, Coke. I mean, I guess those are modern divinities because these things did not exist back in the day. So these are modern adaptations. All right. Food items like yam, bread, plantain. I'd simply say in Jamaica, sometimes fried dumpling is offered. Mints, like icy mint or dinner mints, etc., are offered without getting too specific. There are non-food items that are also offered. Flowers. There are divinities that are fond of flowers. Oils in Jamaica and across Africa. Well, more so in Africa, you have palm oil, dissolved animal fat, shea butter, and oil. In Jamaica, the oils that include things like the olive oil and the various Middle Eastern oil of this, oil of that, oil of whatever. All right. The next one is we're looking next at spiritual bath. One of the things I want us to understand is that when the energy is off keel, as I said a couple slides ago, one of the ways of getting it back on keel is to offer a spiritual bath to realign your energy. All right. Now, some of the bath ingredients include things such as perfumes, Florida water cologne, Kananga water cologne, rose water, 4711 cologne, and others. You know, obviously can't list out all of them. Now, for the bath water, the main thing that is in the whatever container they're using, you have like river, spring, sea, or rainwater. I remember one healer, this is Jamaica, one healer telling me that he doesn't use rainwater because on its way down from the clouds, rainwater comes in contact with a number of different energies. And it makes sense. It makes sense when you really look at it like that. Rainwater comes in contact with a number of different kinds of energies. And it gets to be kind of chaotic. They put it in bath water. Well, so he advises. You have other traditions that use regular tap water as well, and they're fine with it. All right. Herbal ingredients. Sorry. Herbal ingredients. Leaf of life is very big within the tradition. There are a number of traditions. These are primarily Jamaican now. Wild basil, dasheen leaves, nutmeg, pear, and others. These are all used as part of, you know, whether to massage on the forehead, on the skin, or part of the bath water. Now, some slides ago, I spoke about blood offerings. Blood offerings require animals. Now, before that, it is important to understand that these are very old traditions. They predate Christianity. A lot of them go back to a time when human sacrifice was offered. This was stopped many years ago, donkeys years ago, hundreds of years ago. But it started out there, all right? Now, the animals that are offered, you know, based on the traditions that I have looked at, as like roosters, hens, sheep, pigs, oxen, and I even come across a group that offer rabbits, you know, pigeons and all of that. And I said goats already. So these are animals that are offered, and they are, well, we're not going to get too much into that. Now, the oils that are offered here, the same oils that are from the other one, from the food offering, palm oil, dissolved animal fat, shea butter oil, etc. Now, for spiritual baths, there are certain abstinences, certain restrictions that have to be observed. Immediately after a bath, there are some abstinences like food after a particular bath, depending on what the ailment is. The client who just received the bath may be told that he or she cannot eat a particular thing cannot eat callaloo for say 17 days. And I'm just taking this out of the air, all right? They can't engage in sexual activity of any kind, and for a particular number of days. Can't have regular baths for a number of days either. It just is the way it is, all right? Restrictions. Realms and dimensions. Earlier, the question was posed as to where is God located? It all depends on the tradition, but the physicists have some explanation, which I don't think they're meant to connect with the spiritualists, but which I see as a connection. And this is an area in which I'm currently doing some work. Probably shouldn't tell you that, Steve. This is an area in which I'm currently doing some work. Bosonic theory states that there are 26 dimensions. Regular M-string theory says that there are, well, I've seen 11, I've seen 10, and I've seen 12. Let us use 10 as the or 11 as the limit. We're talking about first dimension, second dimension, third dimension. These are probably ideas that you would have heard. And I'm not necessarily speaking to you, gentlemen, but persons who may be watching this. There is also a 0th dimension, which is a point. It's a pointer. And an entity that lives in the 0th dimension is like a barnacle. It cannot move in any direction. All right? It is just there for the rest of its life. If it is moved, it's because the substrate on which it resides is moved, and it moves along with it. Then there's a 1 dimension in which it can only go in forward or backward. The entity can only go forward or backward. And the best example I've seen of this is an ant on a piece of string. It can only go forward or back, left or right. There's no other way for it to go. All right? But there are other dimensions. And as human beings, we are 3-dimensional beings. The image painted in our minds, by our eyes, painted in our brains by our eyes, when we look, has both length, width, and height. All right? 3 dimensions, length, width, and height. Now, we are restricted to just these 3 dimensions. That's all we can see. That's how we operate. Now, there's a 4th dimension in which the agency of time comes into it. So length, width, and height, and time. Time can change. Could have been thinking about last week, or the week before, or next week, or the week before, or the week after. Human beings exist in the 3rd dimension, as I said a while ago. 4th dimension, the agency of time gets involved. And we're leading towards where the God energy, or where the divine energy resides. One of the questions I think I asked was, where's God? Where's God located? We'll go into where I think that is. There are 4 dimensions. The 5th dimension, I get parallel universe, where I am here, but I'm also living in another universe. All right? It gets very esoteric, so it probably stretching your mind, as maybe most of what I've said so far. All right, we're talking about the 5th dimension, the 6th dimension, 7th dimension. The 8th dimension is where entities lose their physical bodies. There's no physical body. They exist without a physical body. You can hear them, communicate with them, but you cannot see them. All right, it gets a little more, no longer have physical bodies. This is the 8th dimension. All right, when you get to the 9th dimension now, this is where what you call the shapeshifters exist. They can change shape, can materialize and dematerialize. Earlier I spoke of the sacred dwarfs. They can materialize and dematerialize, meaning they can present themselves, they can appear and disappear. And that is in the 9th dimension. The 10th dimension is where entities, or the entity possesses infinite power. They have full control over time, over everything. All right, they can change time. They can make today into last week. Can make today into tomorrow. They're not restricted by time, and not just for themselves. For the fourth dimension people, if for instance I was a fourth dimension person, I can change my time to last week and appear into last week, but I can't change your time. All right, the 10th dimension can do it for everybody. That's infinite power. All right. The 11th dimension, though, and to be honest with you, I'm kind of having a problem with this. The supreme creator in my mind supposed to be the ultimate. There can be another dimension higher than where this energy resides, but and this is where the physicists separate from spiritualists like myself. And there's the 11th dimension in which they go down to the string theory, and this is where the energy that is emitted comes from. It goes down beyond the molecular level where you have strings that make up the molecules. These strings vibrate perpetually, and this is what emits the energy that all entities emit. All right, I know it is very esoteric. It is very problematic for some people to actually grasp. But let us look at a rubber band then. The rubber band is made up of atoms, material which is made up of atoms, and those atoms in turn are made up of strings. Lengthy, microscopically lengthy particles. Now, those particles are vibrating, which is what results in a rubber band emitting energy because the material in which the rubber band is made is vibrating. The rubber band itself vibrates as a consequence of its internal components vibrating, and that is what emits the energy. All right. So the 11th dimension is said to be where the strings exist, and as a consequence, that is what generates the energy. That is the end of it, guys. I know it is esoteric. I had to rush the last part of it, but was because, to be honest with you, I know Courtney spoke to me some time ago, maybe about a month, maybe a little less than a month ago, or maybe a little more. But I honestly didn't remember. And when he messaged me, I think it was yesterday or the day before, could have been the day before, I was up to my ears in something else. I had to start working on this yesterday. I got up this morning at 3 o'clock and finished it. So yes, parts of it seem rushed. I'm sorry about that, but if there's another time, I'll try and make up back for it. So you guys have any questions?
Well, what I found interesting is this whole dimension thing, because we know of the 5th dimension singing songs, and and so.
I mean the group.
Right.
The group.
Yeah.
Singing group.
The singing group. Yeah. So I didn't know that you have so many dimensions, and I find it quite interesting, really.
Yeah, man. The bosonic theory though, that says 26, but that is high physics. It's not necessarily representative of the physical world. It gets down into, because you see the people, even the M string that talk about below atom, subatomic level, where you have strings that vibrate. And I'm sure you can go below that because those strings are made up of other things. You see what I'm saying? It gets very deep, very esoteric, very quickly.
Yeah, but that's why I was thinking about that, because we realize that this whole thing about quantum physics now, that is, really, being highlighted in the world. Yeah, and your explanation. So you give us something that we have to go really start really research or look into.
It's a very interesting area, though. You can get lost very quickly. Sometimes I have to read over a paragraph 4 or 5 times to fully understand what it is saying. It gets so deep sometimes that the mere single sentence, you have to connect it to something that was said earlier in order for it to make sentence, because to make sense. Because if you were to write everything that's connected into one sentence, the sentence will be, very, very long. It will be extremely long, So the important thing to understand in African spiritual traditions, there is the participants are different from biblical figures. There are no, as I said earlier, no Mary, Joseph, Malachi, Matthew, Mark, none of those exist in original African spiritual traditions. Everything is different. It's a different a different set of, and the thing is, religion is very funny. Religion evolved to meet the needs of the people in the locales in which which they are located. So for people located in, say, the Nile Valley, their religion will be different from the people who live in, say, the Kalahari Desert. There's a different set of requirements, and the religion is there to meet the needs of those people.
But the question I have is, they ever come together?
Sorry, if what?
Do they ever come together?
They who? The people, the various
religions, the people, yeah.
No, what you find, and this goes back to the colonial mentality, is that there are persons who say that theirs is the only one and is the right one and everything else is evil. That is what I alluded to earlier, tolerance of different beliefs. Something evolve in your area, or even if it doesn't evolve in your area and you adopt it, doesn't mean that you must try and stomp out everything else that existed, some of which existed long before yours came into being. And I'm not hitting at religion per se, it's just general tolerance and understanding for other people. They are just as committed to what they believe in as you are to yours. It is what it is, I remember the literature advises that the colonials did everything they could to get African spiritual traditions out of the Africans and to get them to adopt Christianity, to the point where what they call masking actually started to take place, where when you look and say, for instance, in a country like Cuba, when you look and say in the home of one of the enslaved, you might see a statuette of St. Francis of Assisi. And I use that because that's an example I use often. And because Cuba is a Roman Catholic domain, control that Roman Catholic dominated territory, they adopt some of the symbolisms of the overbearing culture, but they ascribe a different meaning to it. You may see a statuette of St. Francis of Assisi in the home of one of the enslaved, but it has nothing to do with Christianity, it has nothing to do with Roman Catholicism, has nothing to do with St. Francis of Assisi. They are using it as a representative of one of the Yoruba divinities.
Okay, wow.
So that way they mask, that's what they call masking or syncretization. They use it to trick the colonizer into thinking that they have
gone over
converted.
Yeah,
but they haven't converted.
Yeah,
they haven't converted. Yeah, they haven't converted. And in a territory such as Jamaica, one of the things that they did in Jamaica, the head of the religious authority was the Church of England. So there are no saints here. All right, there's no Saint Francis of Assisi and no Saint whatever. It's a Protestant nation, Jamaica. And in doing that, in doing the same thing, what they did was ascribe equivalence to some of the prophets. So you find when they speak of in Protestant Catholicism, when they speak of Saint Michael or one of the prophets, then Saint Matthew, is not the Matthew in the Bible they're talking about. It's an African divinity. It's the same thing they did.
Okay.
Same thing. No change. But what has happened is that over the years, that knowledge has been lost. And modern day practitioners practice wholeheartedly believing that what is being read, what is being said, what was being said by the original traditionalists in Jamaica was in keeping with Protestant Christianity. No, it's a different thing they were talking about. They use the same names, but it means something different. Same, just like how they use St. Francis of Assisi in Cuba, and there's a whole host of them. This saint is equivalent to that divinity. Some amount of equivalence was sought, was made, And, they sort of shifted it to cause the colonizers to believe that conversion took place. But they didn't. This right, I think his name is Desmangles. He advised that the black faces are the faces of the black gods was masked behind the white faces of the saints and the biblical prophets. It is what it is. How close are we to 11 o'clock now?
To 11 to 12?
To 12, sorry. Yes, just about the end.
Yeah, we are past that.
We're just about to close, because it's right at midday time. Yeah, I want to thank you.
Yeah, man, no problem. All right, we talk again. Take it easy.
Yeah, well.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, man.
Okay. Yeah, so we have come to the end of the broadcast on the Real Stuff podcast. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
You lead us so full. You belong far away away. Ajugwala lebo buseru. Lida mua, lida sungfula. Lida mua, lida sungfula.
Well, unfortunately, this is it. Till next time. Bless.
All you gotta do is just speak. One word is enough, and I'm no longer so rough. I forget what I was trying to say. I no longer do what I was gonna do, but you're no good for me. That's why me do what set me I think of flee. Me I fi take away me say. Me I fi take away me say. Me I fi hide like a thief in the night. Me I fi get out of sight.